Let me say, can I say one thing?
please.
To me, Stanley, the great Stanley Kubrick,
Yeah.
was an actor's enemy.
Well, he did 100 takes.
He was
per
an
shot.
actor's enemy. And I can point to movies that he's done, the worst performances I've ever seen in movies.
Hollywood loves a good story. Perfect friendships, beaming smiles on the red carpet, gushing acceptance speeches. It's a beautifully crafted image of artistic harmony. But we all know that behind the velvet ropes, there's often a different story. One filled with clashing egos, professional jealousy, and bitter rivalries. For over 60 years, Robert Duvall has been a quiet giant in this world. He's an actor with uncompromising integrity, a man whose performances feel less like acting and more like living. He's been the loyal consigliere, the fearsome lieutenant colonel, and the grizzled Texas Ranger, standing shoulder-to-shoulder with the biggest names in the business. Through it all, Duvall has been a notoriously private, straight-shooting guy. He's always valued honesty, preparation, and the craft of acting above all else, letting his incredible body of work do the talking. So, has he really, at 94 years old, suddenly released a list of actors he hated? Well, no, there's no formal hate list. But if you take a careful look back at his own words, the legendary on-set battles, and his sharpest criticisms, a clear pattern emerges. It points to 4 specific Hollywood figures with whom he fundamentally clashed over art, money, and respect. These aren't just minor disagreements, they're the stories of epic conflicts that shaped a legend. You think you know the real story behind the movies? Think again. To understand the conflicts, you first have to understand the man. Robert Duvall wasn't born into the Hollywood machine. He grew up in a military family, the son of a Navy rear admiral who wanted him to follow a path of military honor. But Duvall struggled in school. The only place he ever truly felt at home was on the stage. After a tour in the Army, he used the GI Bill to move to New York City and study under the legendary Sanford Meisner at the Neighborhood Playhouse. That's where his artistic philosophy was forged. To make ends meet in 1950s New York, Duvall worked as a post office clerk and drove a truck. It was a world away from the glamour of LA. It was all about the work, the craft, and the struggle. And he wasn't alone. In a twist of fate that sounds like it was written for a movie, his roommates were 2 other actors trying to make it. Guys you might have heard of, Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. The 3 of them shared a cramped apartment, ran lines, and dreamed of just getting a chance to work. They were bound by a shared passion and a code that put the art of acting first. This wasn't about becoming a movie star. It was about becoming a great actor. Duvall's core belief, learned from Meisner, was simple. Acting is about truth. For him, the process was everything. It started and ended with talking and listening. You don't chase a result. You let the process of becoming a character take you there. This dedication to authenticity became his trademark. He'd do his homework. For wrestling, Ernest Hemingway, he spent weeks getting shaves from an 82-year-old Cuban barber in Miami to understand the rhythm of the work. For Apocalypse Now, he thought the original character was ridiculous. So he did his own research and met with a real helicopter pilot to create the iconic Colonel Kilgore we know today. This dedication earned him massive respect, but it also put him on a collision course with anyone who didn't share his reverence for the process. For Robert Duvall, acting was a sacred duty, and anyone who didn't take it seriously, director, co-star, or producer, was going to hear about it. The relationship between Robert Duvall and Francis Ford Coppola is one of the most creatively successful and famously intense in film history. Together, they gave us masterpieces like The Godfather Part 2, and Apocalypse Now. Duvall has often said he loves and respects Coppola as a director, and yet, their time together was marked by 2 major conflicts over 2 of the most important things in Hollywood: money and respect. The first battle was over The Godfather Part 3. After his Oscar-nominated performance as Tom Hagen, it was unthinkable that the third film would happen without him, but he was nowhere to be seen in the final movie. For years, rumors swirled, but the reason was painfully simple: money. Paramount Pictures offered Al Pacino a massive salary, reportedly 5 or more times what they offered Duvall. For Duvall, this wasn't just a lowball offer, it was a profound sign of disrespect. He knew Pacino was the star, but as he explained in an interview, if they paid Pacino twice what they paid me, that's fine, but not 3 or 4 times, which is what they did. He felt the studio was being cheap and wasn't valuing his contribution to the franchise. He refused the role, and the character of Tom Hagen was unceremoniously killed off screen. Coppola himself later admitted the film felt incomplete without Duvall, but the salary dispute was nothing compared to the War of Wills that went down in the jungles of the Philippines during the chaotic shoot of Apocalypse Now. At the center of it was a fundamental disagreement over a single, crucial scene. Duvall had poured everything into playing Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore, delivering the iconic line, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." But there was another scene he felt was the key to the whole character. After the brutal helicopter attack, Kilgore was shown saving the life of a wounded Vietnamese child. For Duvall, this moment revealed the man's profound contradiction. He could order destruction one moment and show compassion the next. It was the humanity inside the monster. Coppola cut it. To this day, Duvall seems baffled by the decision. He felt removing the scene robbed Kilgore of his depth, turning him into a one-dimensional caricature. It was a betrayal of the work he had done to create a complex human being, while he and Coppola's professional relationship continued. These two battles show that even with a director he respected, Robert Duvall would not back down when his principles were on the line. In 1989, audiences were captivated by what many call the greatest Western ever made, the miniseries Lonesome Dove. Robert Duvall played the charismatic and talkative Gus McCrae, a role he calls his personal favorite. Opposite him was Tommy Lee Jones as the stoic and emotionally closed-off Woodrow Call. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, the heart and soul of the story, but behind the scenes, their relationship was famously distant. The issue wasn't a dramatic feud or a big blow-up. Instead, it seems it was a clash of two very different personalities. Robert Duvall, then in his late 50s, was an open and gregarious guy on set, much like his character, Gus. Tommy Lee Jones, on the other hand, was much more like his character, Call. He was intensely private, famously gruff, and all business. He was there to do a job, not to make friends. While Duvall would chat with the cast and crew, Jones often kept to himself. Sources from the grueling 90-day shoot described the atmosphere as professional but never warm. The two leads respected each other's talent, but they operated in separate orbits. Their dynamic almost perfectly mirrored their characters. Duvall, as Gus, was constantly trying to draw out his old friend, to get him to open up. Jones, as Call, was constantly deflecting and focusing on the task at hand. Life started imitating art. That frustration you see in Gus's eyes when Call refuses to connect was likely fueled by the real-life dynamic. Between the two men, there were no screaming matches. Both men were consummate professionals. In interviews, they've always been diplomatic, acknowledging the magic they made on screen but never pretending to be close buddies. The irony is that this very friction is probably what made their performances so powerful. The longing for connection and the frustration of not being able to reach an old friend felt real because, in a way, it's a testament to their incredible talent that they turned that professional distance into one of the most moving depictions of friendship in television history. It's clear that Robert Duvall's commitment to his craft sometimes led to friction with Hollywood's biggest names, but the stories don't stop there. The next name on our list involves a clash with another acting titan. Before we get to that, if you're finding these hidden Hollywood stories fascinating, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next. The 1993 film Wrestling Ernest Hemingway brought together two acting giants, Robert Duvall and Richard Harris. Duvall played Walter, a quiet, retired Cuban barber. Harris played Frank, a loud, hard-drinking former sea captain. On paper, it was a dream pairing. In reality, it was a collision of two vastly different, but equally powerful, acting philosophies. Richard Harris was a force of nature, a legendary hellraiser in his youth. He was an actor who gave grand, operatic, larger-than-life performances. He was a lion, and he roared in every scene. Robert Duvall, on the other hand, was the master of subtlety. His power came from his stillness, from the flicker of an eye. Richard Harris himself once paid Duvall the ultimate compliment, calling him the closest thing you've got in America to Alec Guinness. When these two opposite forces met on set, the professional respect was immense. But so was the underlying competition. The film's premise, two old men vying for attention, began to play out behind the camera. The tension wasn't personal animosity, but a duel of professional styles. Harris, in the showier role, commanded attention. Duvall, in the quieter role, countered this with intense, focused stillness, drawing the camera to him, not through volume, but through truth. It became a fascinating study in contrast. In scenes where Frank tries to teach Walter to be more assertive, the lines between actor and character blurred. Harris, the extrovert, was genuinely trying to pull a bigger performance out of Duvall, the introvert. Duvall, in turn, resisted, staying true to his character's quiet nature. The director, Rhonda N., had her hands full managing these two talents. The film itself got mixed reviews, with most critics agreeing the performances were the best part. For Duvall, the experience was a reaffirmation of his own beliefs. He respected Harris's talent, but he found his grandstanding style to be the opposite of his own truthful or untruthful mantra. While never a public feud, the film remains a fascinating document of this clash, a showcase of two masters at work, who simply had very different ideas about the nature of acting itself. This final conflict is maybe the most complex and personal. It's a story that starts not on a film set, but in a rundown New York apartment in the 1960s. The man Robert Duvall would have one of his most complicated professional relationships with was none other than his former roommate, Dustin Hoffman. The story of Duvall, Hoffman, and Gene Hackman living together as struggling actors is Hollywood lore. They were a band of brothers. Duvall remembered those days as being filled with a lot of laughs. But as their careers exploded, their paths and their philosophies on acting diverged. Duvall's approach was rooted in the Meisner technique: prepare, research, and then live truthfully in the moment. Hoffman, on the other hand, became one of the world's most famous method actors, a style that sometimes involved provoking real emotions from his co-stars to get a reaction. This fundamental difference became a source of friction. The most famous example of Hoffman's style was on the set of Marathon Man, which prompted his co-star, Sir Laurence Olivier, to ask, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting?" For Duvall, who believes in learning your lines and hitting your mark, this kind of behavior was the ultimate sign of disrespect to the craft. He saw the set as a place of work, not a stage for emotional games. The philosophical gulf between them was vast. Duvall believed in creating an illusion through craft. Hoffman sometimes seemed to believe in creating reality through provocation. The deepest rift, however, may stem from persistent, uncorroborated rumors. For years, there have been whispers, mostly in online forums and speculative videos, that Duvall believed Hoffman sabotaged his chance at a major role early in their careers by telling a director that Duvall was difficult to work with. It's crucial to state that this claim has never been substantiated by mainstream sources, but the fact that such a rumor has persisted for so long speaks to the complex, competitive nature of their relationship. What began as a brotherhood of artists slowly turned into a quiet, professional rivalry between two men who reached the top of their field by taking very different roads. From the jungles of the Philippines to the plains of Texas, from salary disputes with powerful studios to quiet duels of technique with acting legends, Robert Duvall's career has been defined by his unyielding principles. The four figures we've talked about, Francis Ford Coppola, Tommy Lee Jones, Richard Harris, and Dustin Hoffman, represent more than just on-set spats. They represent the philosophical battles Duvall has waged for over 60 years. So, was he difficult, or was he simply demanding excellence? In a town that often rewards compromise, Duvall chose a different path. He stood up for fair pay. He fought a director to preserve a character's humanity. And he navigated working with actors whose methods were the antithesis of his own, all without sacrificing his commitment to the truth. His career is a testament to the idea that integrity matters. He once said that the best directors never had a problem with him. The trouble only came with those he didn't respect. This wasn't arrogance, it was the code of a master craftsman, demanding that everyone treat the work with the same reverence he did. At 94, Robert Duvall's legacy is secure as one of the greatest actors of all time. But maybe his greatest role was one he never played on screen, the role of Hollywood's conscience. He reminds us that behind the glamour, filmmaking is an art form that requires discipline, respect, and honesty. In the end, Robert Duvall's story is not about the actors he hated, but about the principles he loved. What do you think? Was Robert Duvall a principled artist, defending his craft, or a difficult actor who was hard to work with? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden stories of Hollywood, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.